At home on every rural road, Hyundai Country Calendar.
It's one thing to live in a beautiful place, but you got to have money as well.
They've come back home to a remote part of the east coast of the Bay of Plenty, and they've got big plans to improve the living they make from the sea.
Trying to be able to harvest from the wild instead of just relying on what Mother Nature throws up on the beach.
They're harvesting seaweed to be turned into a concentrate that is claimed to be a tonic for everything on the farm.
It's like a smorgasbord feast for soil and plants and for animals.
On the east coast of the Bay of Plenty, bad weather can mean money.
We just had a good storm system move through here, and all the conditions were right, the swell and the wind and everything, which brings it in to our area. So it's a good day to be a seaweed harvester.
Paul Houston and Simone Rankin have a business gathering seaweed from the beach for use in agriculture. When a storm hits their area, they've got to be ready to move.
We're always monitoring the weather. We're looking out for nice low pressure systems, at least tropical cyclones possibly. So when we see one coming, we usually can predict it a few days, 3 or 4 days beforehand. So then we know what day we'll be busy, when's the first day we'll be going out looking.
Just because it looks rough doesn't necessarily mean there'll be seaweed on the beach. So yeah, there's a lot to actually consider and take in. I think you have to be self-motivated, and it's not the most glamorous job in the world.
You got to do what you got to do to make a living.
Yeah, what else would we have if we didn't have this? I really enjoy being out in the fresh air, and the office view's not too bad.
Simone and Paul have a small group of collectors they work with.
We've got 3 other families in our area in Waihau Bay collecting, and we've got 2 over in Gisborne.
From the time the seaweed hits the beach, they have 48 hours to get it on the truck and back home on the drying lines. Seaweed has little value to the processor unless it's been properly hung and dried.
This is how the marketplace take it, dry, as a whole plant. Unfortunately, they don't take it wet, so we need to dry it. It takes about 4 days in prime weather conditions. So you need a little bit of wind, a bit of sun, and low humidity.
It'll take us a good couple of hours to hang each truck. By that time, the tide should be sort of on its way out by then, so we'll be right to turn around and go back for another load. Long days, you're always waiting for the right tides and everything, so you just gotta, when it's in, you gotta pounce on it, sort of thing.
Paul and Simone have been working with seaweed for the last 12 years.
Yeah, no, we're pretty used to working together now. We sort of spent most of, not all of our life doing everything together. So we still get on each other's nerves now and then, but I always put her into place.
As long as he remembers who's boss.
Waihau Bay is a popular fishing spot in the eastern Bay of Plenty, but outside of farming there's little work on offer. The couple wanted to come home to raise their family, but they always knew it would be tough to make a living here.
Well, we did a bit of a stint over in Australia. We were there for about 3 years, maybe, and that's where our firstborn, well, our eldest boy was born over there, and I think once he was born, we kind of felt alone and wanted to come back and be around the family.
I think at the end of the day, it just didn't feel like home for us, where we wanted to set our life up and everything like that. We didn't feel like Australia was the place for that.
Should actually go on the rocks.
Oh, yep, some kinna would be nice. Actually, it was over a few beers one night with my dad. And a tropical cyclone had just blown in, and our beaches were loaded with seaweed. And we got to talking about how great Nanny, like a lot of other people in our area, used to collect beach cast seaweed back in the day. So, yeah, that was us the next day. Out so we went.
Oh, yeah, that's something that used to be done before. So we thought, oh, we'll go and collect the seaweed and
see if we can get some money for it to pay for our car. But didn't quite work like that, eh? We thought, oh, you just get on the beach, pick it up and sell it to someone. But no, we found out straight away that that's not how the process works. You actually needed a
License.
a permit. Yeah, a permit to be able to actually pick the beach cast stuff up and sell it and all that sort of stuff.
A lot of rules and regulations had been put in place, I think, had changed from back in the day, so... Yeah.
It wasn't as easy as we originally first thought. We thought, oh, well, I thought, oh, well, that's our first hurdle. Oh, well, we're buggered. But she actually said, well, why not? Why can't we, get into this and, try and make it a job for us? So she was the one who really kicked it off.
Aside from the regulations, the biggest problem with relying on beach cast seaweed is that you're always waiting for the right conditions.
It's all weather dependent, so we're really relying on storms, and it's just the inconsistency. It might be here today, but then it may not arrive on our beaches till a month later. So yeah, it's really hard to actually make a solid living off it. I think 6 months was our longest drought, which is a long time to be out of income. Yeah, the bills still pile up, so yeah, really hard.
To take the uncertainty out of it, they went looking for expert help.
We sort of thought if we could harvest from the wild on calm days and then collect after a storm from the beach, that we could maybe make a consistent income.
In summer, most people towing their boats to the launching ramp at Waihau Bay are off fishing. But this is a working boat, and it's part of a 7-year research project. Harvesters Paul Houston and Simone Rankin have an ambitious plan to supplement beach cast seaweed with plants cut from the sea.
On calm days we'd harvest from the wild, and after a storm we'd be collecting up the beach, and maybe we could actually create some employment for ourselves. It's our natural resource, it's right on our doorstep, and as long as it's sustainable, yeah, why not?
In search of help, they teamed up with marine scientist Tim Haggett.
How's it looking, mate?
Yeah, all right. With my background in seaweed research, together we thought, well, let's look at taking it naturally from the beds in a sustainable way that also makes economic sense as well.
Tim Haggett's specialist area is seaweed and marine ecology. He did his PhD on the type of kelp common to these waters. It's the same species sought after by collectors like Paul and Simone.
This is a Clonia radiata type of kelp. It essentially attaches to the reef with the holdfast, and then we have a stalk upright here in the blades, which are the photosynthetic part. It grows throughout northern and eastern New Zealand and on the west coast as well, down the South Island, but it's really highest biomass and abundance is sort of around the area here, Waihau Bay, Coromandel.
Tim, Paul and Simone have a special permit to harvest seaweed from the wild. Since 2007, they've been running trials on a range of local sites.
In terms of trying to make this a commercial operation, we wanted to know how much of this actual stock do we have growing, and is this area big enough to sustain us doing this?
It's meant investing in a lot of gear.
This is our surface air supply that we breathe off. It's either this or bottles, and it was just not economical for us to dive with bottles doing this job.
The research involves Paul and myself going out, we map the beds, and then we gridded up the areas with the high Clonia biomass, and then we pick grids that we want to harvest from. Seaweed's crucial to the nearshore marine environment. It provides habitat for a lot of species, and also is it's the start of the food chain. And that's why we have to go through such a rigorous experimental process, so we fully understand what the effects are going to be.
was not just gathering hard data, but at the end of the day, we want to be commercial operators. The cage idea that we have at the moment was just one of the ideas that we came up with. Simone and I spent long hours in the shed fabricating these particular things to be able to harvest the weed from. So what we do is we just throw the cages over to our GPS coordinate that Tim has given us, and then we harvest that particular square.
Simone's been on deck for most of these research dives.
Yeah, I'm just ensuring that he's got enough hose fed to him and making sure there's not too much out also, because he could get tangled in it. We've got our own little codes of tugging for different reasons, for safety. If the machine cuts down, there's actually air in this chamber, so he gets time to surface with a warning. Been the boat woman for a few years now, so yeah, I'm ready to get down there and show him how it's done.
Today's dive is going well. Paul's very happy with the quality of the kelp coming off this particular plot on the reef.
Good sight, that. It's pretty impressed with that one. Real dense, real big weed. Trouble fitting in the cages. For now, this method seems to be working, but would like to eventually get a few more divers. It's not in the easy category anyway, put it that way. It's pretty tough. They need a gym workout after this.
Once landed, the harvested seaweed is treated just like the beach cast.
From fresh, wild harvest is definitely cleaner because it's free of stones, sand and other seaweeds. And hung straight away, you don't want to let it sit in the scorching sun because it will start drying on top and start composting in the middle. So getting uneven dryness and slimy, so the quality's affected at the end of the day.
Paul's parents live nearby. Makere and Rob Houston help out when they're needed. Rob is hoping that the research will create more jobs.
For our children, employment here is the biggest issue. Like I said, it's on, off sort of, we just live like feast or famine here. You know, we can have work for a short time, but it just doesn't last. So this idea with the seaweed, it's good, very good idea. There's not much else, and I think they've done very, very well. Yeah, it's should have a future.
Funding for the last 7 years of research has come from Agrisea. Agrisea buys seaweed to make a concentrate for agriculture. Jill Bradley's one of the owners.
We decided as a team really, with Dr. Tim Haggard, to look at doing some research. Seaweed had been under moratorium for some 10 years at that time, so there was no way of being able to cut it from the sea. Wow, that's incredible, the size of the stipe, the length of the stipe. In the future, what we'd like to see is still to maintain the beach cast seaweed as it is, but to have very, very good management around the wild harvester seaweed, to have hopefully local people in charge of, certain areas that they're very familiar with, and that, long-term seaweed industry that's high value can be in place for New Zealand. You see, seaweed industry worldwide is huge, billions and billions of dollars. New Zealand's got the most amazing seaweeds here, and we have got the opportunity for a sunrise industry that can, bring money into our country, give jobs to local people around these remote coastal areas, So, yeah, I suppose it's a I don't know, bit of a big vision.
But the vision needs the support of the science. In Waihau Bay, in the eastern Bay of Plenty, Paul Houston and Simone Rankin are sorting their seaweed crop.
This is great quality, it's the standard that we're after. This is the final product. It's about to be packed and put on the back of the truck and shipped off to the market. This is exactly what we're after, jet black appearance. The stipe is flat, dry, a nice crispy crunch to it, so it's not over dry or damp. Yeah, this is perfect.
These days, Paul and Simone handle seaweed for the other harvesters in the bay as well.
Hey. How's it going?
Hey Grant, how you going?
Grant Pulu is another collector living in the area.
We didn't actually go out there looking for other collectors. They've approached us over the years asking how they could get involved with doing beach cast seaweed. And the only way they were able to was actually working under our permit. So they want to know how much you've collected, an estimated weight. They want to know who was down, well, how many were down there, how long it took you, and what species you're actually collecting. And where you're going to land it at the end of the day, where it's going to go off to. It has to be sold to a licensed fish receiver. So yeah, there's actually quite a lot involved in it. It's not as simple as just go on the beach, pick it up and hang it up and yeah, throw it in a bag.
No stones in there.
No stones in there.
Had the odd ones that have put clothes or stones at the bottom of the fetch.
Like the others, Grant would love a more reliable income from the resource.
Awesome. Nice. Exactly what we're looking for.
Beautiful.
Wicked, right?
Oh, that's my bread and butter, getting the seaweed off the beach. When it's rough out there, run, go down and get some seaweed. Hard mahi, it ain't easy. Sometimes you got to walk on the rocks and get it.
When marine scientist Tim Haggett came to Waihau Bay 7 years ago to research seaweed, the locals were highly suspicious.
When I first arrived, I'd come back from diving for the day and be met down at the boat ramp, everyone thinking I'd been taking the crays from the cray pots. You know, the more we've been doing, you know, it's such a great place to work. There's some great characters here, some really, really awesome people. I love it.
Tim's been hired to see what the likely impacts are of cutting seaweed directly from the reef, rather than waiting for it to wash up on the beach.
When you're taking seaweed, it's the bottom of the food web. So you've got to be really, really sure of what the effects are going to be. And the whole reason for doing the research is so that we can understand better, if we remove kelp naturally from the system, what are the effects? The wire frame, it's called a quadrat. It's 1 metre squared. I throw it around haphazardly and measure everything inside it. We've got snails, we've got sponges. What I do is measure them all, get the size, how many there are before we harvest, and then we go back and see how many there are and the size of those so we can gauge what sort of effects we might be having. And they're all important for the ecosystem. The result so far is it comes back pretty quick, and in some cases it comes back at a higher density than what was there beforehand, before we took it. You know, this species is set up for disturbance of this nature, but that's not to say we still have to put in the research behind it, because we want to know what seasons are best to take the clonia off the reef so we can get the best recovery with the least impacts. It's just been an amazing experience, and you know what's really from a scientist's point of view, from my perspective, is that you know your science that you do is going to have hopefully some really good outcomes, you know, for the community here and Paul and Simone, you know, and I'd say that's probably the most rewarding thing.
Beach cast or wild harvest, this is where the dried product comes. Agrisea brews a concentrate from seaweed in this old dairy factory in Paeroa. Jill Bradley started the business in the mid-90s.
Seaweed's been used for centuries. We got interested in seaweed about 20 years ago when we visited a farm whose main input was seaweed. So we came back and started researching, years of trialling and researching, just on our own garden. And kind of by accident, we got to start a company just for home gardeners. And then over time, once we moved out here to the Hauraki Plains, farmers started coming in and orchardists and kiwi fruit people, you know. First of all, we visually assess the seaweed. We have a look at every single bale is looked at. So once it's quality control checked, it's milled. Once it's been milled, it's put into just warm water. And it's hand stirred every day for a period of 3 months. So it's a long, slow brewing process. The reason for that is to protect all the elements in the seaweed.
And increasing numbers of mainstream farmers are converts to its benefits.
Seaweed is just the most complex material in the world. You get no more complex material than seaweed. So it's got, you know, almost every known element, but it's, as a package, it's its nutrient value, you know. Amazing nutrients, growth hormones, minerals, vitamins, if you dry it properly, you know. So it's like a smorgasbord feast for, you know, for soil and plants and for animals.
After renting around Waihau Bay for several years, Paul and Simone are finally on their own block of land. There's a truck and a garage, but living conditions are basic.
We actually just had the camper van and the container here, which is actually the office, and now we've slowly built on the wet weather drying shed that we're actually living in at the moment, and eventually this is the house site up here where we're hoping one day we can actually build a home. When we first moved onto the section, it was really exciting with no power or no telephone. We had the candles and reading a lot of books, and but it actually made it really hard trying to develop our business with not having the power and phone. But we finally got it on, so yeah, it's making things a lot easier.
Living off seaweed is a struggle, but Paul and Simone hope they'll soon get the go-ahead to harvest from the sea.
The data's looking really promising at the moment. As far as sustainability goes, we're pretty satisfied that it's a doable thing. And in terms of reharvesting plots, it's looking real doable. Well, it grows back just like grass. You mow your lawn, it grows back, just exactly the same thing but underwater.
It would still have to be on a small scale, and there'd have to be a lot of rules and regulations put onto this if it was to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So just ensure that it is sustainable and long term. We've come a long way from the day we returned from Australia with just a suitcase and a baby. It's for the job. Oh, it's awesome. There's so much diversity in it. You're never getting bored, never doing the same thing, always something to do. So yeah, that aspect's awesome.
For more information about this program, go to tvnz.co.nz, keyword Country Calendar, or find us on Facebook.
Country Calendar is brought to you by Hyundai New Zealand. Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.